According to some observers, Pixar's 2022 animated film Lightyear revealed some not-so-positive things about Andy's original toys from the Toy Story films of the 1990s, and some people are now troubled by the new discovery. So stay tuned and don't go away, because Lightyear created a frustrating Toy Story realization. First up, how did Pixar's Lightyear create a frustrating realization about Andy's toys from 1995's Toy Story film? You're about to find out. Pixar's 2022 Lightyear film revealed a noticeable gap in the merchandise of Toy Story films. Buzz and Zurg are the only Lightyear characters featured on merchandise in the Toy Story films, and the other main characters are missing altogether. This reveals some very obvious things about toys in the 1990s, in that there wasn't much diversity and that realistic representation in toys was also absent. At the beginning of Toy Story 1995, the text on the screen tells us that Buzz Lightyear is Andy's all-time favorite toy, and that he succeeds in getting one for his birthday. Later, Andy receives more Lightyear merchandise to add to his collection. A quick montage also reveals Andy's Cowboy and Woody merch as it's replaced by Buzz Lightyear bedding, pajamas, posters, and even his own drawings. 4 years later, in 1999, Toy Story 2 hits theaters, and Buzz Lightyear was temporarily replaced with a different Lightyear figure plucked from an aisle with hundreds of identical action figures at Al's Toy Barn, a place that would put a smile on any child's face. An Emperor Zurg action figure is also released from Al's, and in case you forgot, Emperor Zurg is one of Toy Story's main villains and Buzz Lightyear's arch nemesis. Also in Toy Story 2, there's a joke about Rex, Andy's favorite dinosaur toy, who tries to beat a Buzz Lightyear video game. But the biggest takeaway from the original Toy Story and Toy Story 2 is that Lightyear was such a popular character in the 1990s that it would be possible to sell a ton of merchandise. Next up, how has 2022's Lightyear righted the wrongs of diversity and representation in the franchise's characters? Let's take a look. Fortunately, the main cast of Lightyear is much more diverse than the franchise's predecessors, Toy Story 1995 and Toy Story 2 1999. Character Alicia Hawthorne, played by actor Uzo Aduba, is a strong black woman who is married to another woman, and their granddaughter, Izzy Hawthorne, is also black and played by Keke Palmer. And of course, we have the character Mo Morrison, voiced by multi-hyphenate Taika Waititi. Morrison is a man of color, and Darby Steele, played by actor Dale Soules, is an elderly woman. Pixar's Lightyear has LGBTQ+ characters of color, and even elderly representation. All of these groups were not represented in the 1990s merchandise in the earlier Toy Story films. So why didn't the films in 1995 and 1999 choose to represent these diverse groups? The answer is pretty simple. At the time, the franchise intentionally avoided toys of these characters because it would have been very difficult to market them. That's why all of Andy's human toys are white. Most of the toys in the Toy Story films are based on real-life toys, and non-white toys were rarely represented at the time. Today, there are more human characters of color showing up in the franchise that adequately represent diverse communities. Up next, how has diversity and representation changed since Toy Story 1995? Let's find out. A company called Bokuno is just one of the many companies advocating for diversity and representation in toys. Bokuno crafts dolls by hand with the goal of diversity and inclusion in mind. In a recent interview, Bokuno's founder and CEO, Minako Suzuki Low, said, "I believe children's toys should reflect the outside world and be as diverse as they can be. It feels important to have a doll that feels representative of the child who plays with it, to develop self-worth. A doll that represents different ethnicities and cultures nurtures awareness and acceptance." Bokuno's collection is sold through the popular site Etsy, and the recurring themes throughout the collection are diversity, inclusivity, and equality. Over the decades, a great deal of research has been conducted regarding the importance of playtime for children, and how vitally important it is that children see themselves represented in the world of toys around them. Some companies, like Bokuno, are actually founded by new parents who have shopped for items for their own children, only to find that the clothes, books, and toys don't represent their child or family, and so they take it upon themselves to make their own toys in order to ensure that their children not only feel represented, but that they are living in a world that sees them as equals. Research tells us that these are important factors in healthy child development. Stay tuned and don't go away, because we're about to bring you more news news from the world of toys. Next up, is the world's most popular doll about to make a splash on the big screen? You're about to find out. Can you guess which famous doll is coming to the big screen? No, it's not Chucky. This is a family-friendly video, so pull your head out of the gutter. I'm talking about Barbie, the world's most famous and popular doll. According to Canadian actor Simu Liu, the new Barbie movie will surprise a lot of people. Liu will star alongside Margot Robbie, who of course will play Barbie, and Canadian film star Ryan Gosling, who will play Ken, Barbie's iconic boyfriend. In a recent interview, Liu said, "It's one of the best scripts I've ever read. I think it'll surprise a lot of people, because I think a lot of people get cynical when they see Mattel or they see Barbie." Famed toy manufacturer Mattel originally launched the Barbie doll back in 1959. Barbie has been a hit ever since then, and the rest, as they say, is history. Liu is actually surprised that Mattel agreed to the making of the film, and said, "The first thought I had after reading the script was how in the hell did they get Mattel to sign off on this? Because this is not the kind of movie that corporate overlords sign off on. This is the type of movie that I love unabashedly. It's smart, it's subversive, and it's meta, and it makes fun of itself." Up next, where does the Barbie doll stand as far as diversity and representation are concerned? Let's take a look. It's been 60 years since Ruth Handler, the president and CEO of Mattel, introduced Barbie to the world, and it's no secret that a lot has changed in the world over the past 6 decades. Some people have loved Barbie and what she symbolizes, while others can't stand the iconic doll. Case in point is women's rights activists. Mattel has recognized the world's cultural shifts, and now the doll that was historically white, thin, with large, well, has undergone a drastic overhaul. In fact, between 2015 and 2019, Mattel made a series of changes to their Barbie line, including a wider variety of body sizes, skin tones, hair textures, and ability status. Mattel is finally leveling the playing field in terms of diversity, representation, and inclusion, so that the children of diverse groups can feel like they're represented as well. It's a shame that it took Mattel nearly 6 years to implement these progressive changes, but I suppose slow progress is better than no progress at all, so kudos to Mattel for heading in this direction. Next up, when were the first Barbie dolls with dark skin tones introduced by Mattel? Let's dig a little deeper. Believe it or not, the first dolls with dark skin tones released into the Barbie universe came in the 1960s. But, and this is a big but, the dolls weren't actually Barbies per se, and were called Friends of Barbie. Depending on when you were born, you may remember the first black doll in Barbie's circle named Christy. Speaking of slow progress, it wasn't until 1980, long after the Civil Rights Movement and the Chicano movement, a struggle for Mexican-American empowerment and equality, that Mattel released its first official black Barbie and Hispanic Barbie. So in the 1980s, consumers started to see a white, black, and Hispanic version of each Barbie doll. However, there was still some progress to be made, as Asian and Native American Barbies were still noticeably absent from all collections, which essentially denied adequate representation to the children belonging to these ethnic groups. In Mattel's defense, they did make an effort to create an Asian Barbie in 1981, but it turned out to be an epic failure on their part. It seems like Mattel's heart was in the right place, but they bungled everything up by calling the Asian version Oriental Barbie. For those of you who don't know, the term Oriental is often considered offensive by members of the Asian community. Apparently, Mattel didn't know about the Pan-Asian movement, which took place 10 years earlier, which explicitly called for a ban of the use of the word Oriental because it was considered offensive and derogatory. Finally, has there ever been a Native American Barbie? The first Native American Barbie doll appeared in 1993, but not without some controversy. Professor Patricia McCormick from the University of Alberta's School of Native Studies said that the doll reinforces stereotypes about Aboriginal people. McCormick gave her opinion of Mattel's Native American Barbies and said, "They do not have a Native American vet, lawyer, or school teacher. They are always dressed up as these beautiful Pocahontas-type princesses." That's a wrap for today's video. Thanks for watching.